Well, our system is finally coming along together. We can now perform basic operations with the user entity, like creating a user, finding all users, etc. We are also validating the incoming data to create or update a user, as well as the ID used to find a user in order to do something with him, like retrieving, updating, or removing him. We are progressing nicely. In this lesson, we'll talk about pagination. Imagine that in our database, we have 5 million users stored there. If every time we would access the find all route, we would really retrieve all of them at the same time, then this would be very costly and inefficient. This is where pagination can help us. With it, we can fetch only chunks or pages of data instead of all of the data available. So in our case, we would, instead of bringing all 5 million users at the same time, we would only bring a page of 100 users, for example. In our case of an online shop, the pages of products are like the pages of a book, as they are flipped one after the other. Due to this, we'll use a kind of pagination which is the offset-based pagination, which is simpler and well suited to this case. So let's actually begin then. I'll go to Insomnia to better illustrate this. So here I will create 2 new users. So for example, David and Daria. Now if I go to the find all request, send it again, I'll have all 3 users. And if I go here in this query section, here I can insert query parameters. Query parameters are used to refine a search. For example, paginate the result. To do it, I'll insert 2 query params here, limit and offset. Limit represents how many records should be retrieved. If I use the value of 0 or not send it, then all the records will be retrieved. Offset means how many records should be skipped to define where the search should begin from. If I use the value of 0 or not send it, then the search will start from the beginning, in this case from John. If I set, for example, limit to 1 and offset to 1, then 1 record will be skipped, in this case John, and the search will start from David. And as I only want to bring 1 record, then only David will be returned. But if I send this, as it currently is, then nothing will change, as we have not written any logic for this, which is what we'll do now. I'll go back to VS Code, and first, in the common folder, in DTO, I'll just go back here quickly in the ID DTO and prefix the ID field with read-only, because I forgot to do it earlier. If you remember, prefixing DTO's fields with read-only is a good practice. So I'll just also commit this here quickly to have our commits organized. Prefix ID in ID DTO with read-only. And now I can go back to the continuation. Now I'll create in the same folder the file pagination detail. Here I will export the class pagination detail to represent and validate those fields. So let's begin. Limit and offset. And so that I don't forget again, I already prefix them with read-only. Alright. Now I can set to them the same validation as the ID. They also must be positive integers. But remember that we must also have the option to not send them if we don't want to. So we'll also use the decorator is optional. Well, if offset is not sent, then the search will start from the beginning. No problem. But if limit is not sent, then all the records will be retrieved. This may not be interesting. So what I'll do is go back to the common constants file, and in here I will create a constant for default page sizes, so that if a limit field is not sent, then a default page size will be used in its place. So I will export constant default page size, which will be equal to an object with these page sizes. So for example, user could have a default page size of, let's say, 10. But as this is an object, it is also a composite type. So if I try to change the value of the object, I'll be forbidden, as it is a constant. But its fields are not. So if I try to change the user field, then I will be allowed. To indicate that the fields should also be constants, I'll add here as const. And now I'll not be allowed to do this anymore. And just to have a little bit more of type safety, this object should hold fields that are numbers. But currently I am able to do this. To avoid this, I could give this object the type of an object with fields that their names are strings and their values are numbers, like this. And then it would complain. But if I did this, then this object would become useless, as now I cannot access any fields from it, because it is considered a generic object, let's say. I have lost its typing. What we can do, I will cut this type here, is to use the satisfies keyword that was recently introduced in TypeScript. So now it will complain about that field, but not change the original typing of the object. So you can now have a bit more of type safety in an elegant way. Now let's actually implement pagination. So I'll go back to the users controller, and in the find all route, I'll indicate that here I will receive as query params. Well, it's not appearing here, so I'll quickly reload the window. It should be this one from NestJS, Now I want to receive as query params the pagination detail. Then pass it along to this method in the service. Now I will copy this and going to the method in the service, I'll indicate that it must also have this parameter. And now in here, I will extract the fields from the DTO. And of course, I have to import the DTO. So how do we actually use these values? In the find method from the typeorm repository, we can use these options. Skip and take. Skip is for offset and take is for limit. So let's just set them to these values. But remember that if limit is not sent, we'll use the default page size. So I'll set here the nullish coalescing operator, so that if there is no limit, I'll use this value here on the right, which will be the default page size dot user. And I'll just come back here quickly to the controller to save the file. Now, if we go back to Insomnia again, and with the system running, if I send this same request again, then it will behave as expected. So with this, we have basic pagination working. So I'll just come back here in VS Code to commit the changes. Implementing pagination. In a real-world scenario, it is common to also have some more features related to query parameters or querying. When searching for records, we could also bring, aside from the page's contents, page metadata with some more information such as how many items are there in total. Also, it would be nice if we could have some kind of filter for our search. For example, fetch only the users which have the letter D in their name somewhere. This would be a filtering functionality. In the full course, in the extra module 5, Advanced Querying, we'll cover these topics. So, until the next lesson.